Welcome back and thank you for visiting our virtual booths. I hope you enjoyed that. I know the sponsors will appreciate your visits and so do we. Now we want to hear from Cheryl Savoie to talk about data sovereignty.
Tanse. My name is Cheryl Savoie. I'm from Alexander First Nation and I'm joining you today to speak about data. I'll start the conversation with a quote from Pababol, which are the doctorate and discoveries of some colonial policies that have been in place for quite some time. Indigenous people are not human or Christian. They do not have sovereignty and government. They do not have title to lands and resources. They, in essence, do not have rights. The intention is to provoke thought and raise the questions of data sovereignty as it relates to who is exercising the information on whose behalf. Please join me over a coffee as I share my experience in the value of data in the technology sector and as a First Nations Economic Development Officer and an elected official of my people. I'll start first with some of the discussion on my experience as AGT First Native intern. I first would like, of course, to thank the people and the executive team of AGT at the time and their commitment and inclusion of First Nation and Aboriginal people into their corporate structure with their internship program. Their intention was well-meaning and it was full of experience that I shall not forget. Thank you to that team. As their First Native intern, it was my responsibility to understand the First Nations marketplace in a sales capacity. That was my job. I was to sell into the First Nation marketplace and understand who they are, how they make decisions, how much value do they mean to the company, and what their buying cycles look like. The experience overall was invaluable. I was afforded the opportunity, one, to work with mostly the Southern tribes and the Blackfoot people. And I will never forget my very first meeting with Noreen Plain Eagle from the Piegan First Nation. And the fact is, she said it straight. You're a First Nation woman working in a corporation, and I want you to tell me all of the information that they have on my community. And that pretty much set the standards in my relationships within TELUS and AGT at the time. It was a fabulous working relationship overall. And I would like to acknowledge that and thank you, Noreen, and Roberta Yellowhorn for those times. That relationship overall obviously has to come to an end as AGT was taken into a merger with the TELUS Corporation. Anybody who's been through a major corporate merger would understand at this time that that is a complete experience unto itself. My role within the organization was really in a sales capacity representing the First Nations marketplace to the new leadership team. And at that time, the vice president of the new team came from former AT&T, and they looked at the First Nations market very differently than we did here in Canada, let alone in Alberta. And the fact of the matter is, it wasn't valued in the same way. So the ending of that relationship was with the comment of the natives wouldn't know what to do with technology, even if you gave it to them. And I have to say thank you to those comments because that, in essence, allowed my consulting firm to be born. And it was imperative at that time to understand that the Alberta First Nations were undergoing the Alberta SuperNet initiative. And the Alberta SuperNet initiative was not being represented through the First Nation lens in any way, shape, or form. So First Nations were not their own utility companies, and they didn't understand how to utilize this network or utility in their business models. But it did allow us that some space and again, some opportunity to move forward. I want to segue back to my time in the South And I had the opportunity to sit down with Clifford Cranebear, and he worked within the Glenbow Museum. And Clifford shared with me things that you can't learn from a book. He allowed me the time to go through our artifacts that were held in the back and help me understand what makes a nation and why we're sovereign. Knowing that there's 4 things that make us sovereign: our people, our land, our language, our practices and jurisdiction, were one thing. But when you got to go back into where the artifacts are held, and you see our bundles, and you see the messaging and our symbols, and you could feel the energy that is left and still resonating with our ceremonial items, it leaves a different understanding of who we are as people. And so saying what makes a nation is its people, its customs, membership, clans, and societies is absolute. But how important is that information and that knowledge? And what do we do as people to keep that sacred and sovereign to ourselves? We all have a little work to do. When we talk about data sovereignty in terms of the industry of the telcos, there's 3 terms that are interchangeable when it comes to information or data. One is localization. Where is it created? Within whose borders? Second is residency, geographic location. Where is it being stored? Who's holding that information? How are they managing it? Sovereignty is a matter of legal rights and obligations to the information, whether it's personal or business. I've had an opportunity as an economic development officer and to ride the perfect storm of the Alberta SuperNet and bring that home to my people. And we were allowed the opportunity and enabled ourselves to create the very first 25,000 square foot data center. It was a private organization, private funders that came in. The federal government had nothing to do with it. I want to say that because it's really important as we tell the story and the journey of how we got to that place. It was our old arena. And anybody who's in the community knows how important hockey is to us and what kind of experience we've had within our arenas. The fact is we need them. However, there is no money to operate them. So our arena no longer was able to be operated, and we took advantage of that and leveraged the Alberta SuperNet to let us build an infrastructure private for ourselves to exercise our sovereignty for online gaming. We leveraged the network. We then later empowered our own organization, which was our Gaming Commission, to exercise our jurisdiction. Of course, the Alberta government refuted this, and they certainly didn't want us taking our own jurisdiction into our own hands and being our own commissioners. So there was a cease and desist letter that was sent by the Alberta Liquor and Gaming Commission. And this isn't what changed our business model. The fact is the US legislation with our partners changed the business model. And at that time, we had to take a hard turn off of online gaming because people were getting arrested and put in jail, and our partners simply couldn't afford it. It wasn't that our nation wasn't prepared to move forward and exercise our rights in this way. So there was 3 things that I wanted to share with you. Localization, where was the data being created? Well, we were a hosting organization. We were not creating the information. That was being created in other countries. Second, though, residency. Where is your data being kept? Alexander First Nation is a sovereign region that you can keep your data in. And the sovereignty exercise that we put in place was the Gaming Commission. And so I want to say thank you to the people and the leadership team and my community who allowed that opportunity to happen, and have the hope that we would someday join and be prosperous in economic development. As we all know, First Nations are severely underfunded. I won't stick to that point too long, as we don't have very much time. So second, we move along to the time where I then moved into an elected official position. for my community. And at that time, when I was afforded, again, this invaluable experience of being and supporting and serving my people as an elected official, we were in co-management. And under co-management, it was because we didn't have the financial governance and management practices in place that were part of our federal and fiscal agreement. So the things that I speak to now are going to be around policy, fiscal framework, how people are indicators, how we're measured as First Nations people, and what the treaty framework looked like for us versus the federal framework. And some of the indicators that are on your table today, whether they're the regional health indicators of your people, and so on. And how does that relate back to the data management piece? Well, data management refers to every aspect of how you handle your information. Is your information, how do you prepare it? Is it clean? Is there processes around it? How do you load that information for others to see and use in your daily operations? And are you cataloging your information like a library so that you can use it another time? And are you warehousing it for the future so your future generations can reference some of your historical documents that you are now undergoing and taking forward as your organization? The structure of how your actual day-to-day operations and your management flows. So it hits your front desk of your reception and it moves to where? Those are some of the flows and structures that we talk about and how secure your information is. This pretty much covers everything that you need to look at when you talk about data management. And it is imperative to understand and know that the federal government has no intention of doing government-to-government online processes with us, as there is no funding put in place at this time for First Nations to build their own data capacities. And it's really important because they start pushing us as a First Nation, it's been my experience, to hold hands with our municipal partners and neighbors. And anybody knows in the elected official position that you are responsible for your people. And half of my people at that time do not live on the nation. And so it was important for us to start looking at the city of Edmonton and how they are becoming a smart community. What did their model look like? Who are my First Nations people or membership, and where do they live, and how are they interacting with the rest of the city of Edmonton? And they shared with us their model. It is a beautiful model. And I think that this allows us the opportunity not to recreate the wheel. And I say this because this is, again, a reference for those folks that are willing to at least sit down and share some of their learnings as we kind of move forward on this. So whether you're building your community as a smart community, what does that look like? What does that mean? Is it a safe community? Does that just mean that there's going to be more lighting in your parking lots? And or where are we engaging our young people and our education dollars to help them participate in that government-to-government model that we talk about? So that just segues to another quick slide that I would like to go over, and that is, whose information is it anyway? And what is the Community Wellness Index? Who are you? What level of education do you have? Where do you work? How much money is in your bank account? What is the state of your health right now? Where do you live? How many kids do you have? These are the questions and the consideration of the index for community wellness. This is how the federal government measures if the First Nation communities are close to integrating with the rest of society. Those are the information indicators that are going to be coming in place with Stats Canada. That's who collects the Community Wellness Index. And it relates to our fiscal frameworks as we start negotiating with the federal government. So I say there's some basic considerations for us as First Nations people. Security. Is our information safe? Is it hackable? How much is it worth if it's lost? And capacity. How much do you want to keep? You're going to collect it. Where are you going to prepare to store it and to use it? And as far as integrity, are you getting the same amount of information in the cup as you put in when it's time to come out? And I guess fundamentally, what does it matter to you? Is it your responsibility as an individual, or is someone else looking after that information for you? That moves us right into governance and management. So the question that I spoke of earlier, who are you? Where is your data? What handshakes are taking place with your information? If you can't figure out where all your information is, how can you call it yours? How do you use Facebook, Instagram? What information do you give the insurance companies and your financial institutions? It is all the handling of information that is data governance. So, in short, I think we have some room that we could do some improvement in making our policies and our processes to address some of these issues that we move forward, which moves right along to the 3 benefits of having a strong data strategy. Ensuring that you match your IT strategy with your operational needs is critical. Improving the quality of your decision making through valid, accurate information, and protecting the organization from liability. Security and regulatory perspective is imperative in a good data strategy. What data can be made anonymous before it's being processed? I think those are some things that I would like to just bring forward for consideration. And moreover, does your organization have an O&M line item in your budget set aside for IT? I know ours doesn't and didn't, and we have some work to do in that area. So those areas for consideration, again, I'm just going to circle back, but where your information is created, where is it stored, what procedures you have in place for backup and security, and understanding data privacy regulations is crucial. So hopefully we are now considering how to enhance community capacities using technology, and how can we create more jobs for our people in this area. I hope that data sovereignty is now a little bit understood in the holding in the relationship with residency and localization. So legally rights and obligation versus geography, and where is your data being created. Consider what and how your information is being used on your own behalf. I'd like to thank you for your time today, and I'm going to be leaving a few references and acknowledgements of people who are doing some great work in this area. There's organizations and there's companies overall. I've had the privilege to talk and meet with specifically Coy Wolf is doing some fantastic 3D scanning imaging work. If you're interested in your land and or in projects like a pipeline. Point out of Calgary is doing some fantastic work in your daily operations and how do you keep your information and manage it. ITP is working in some fantastic sovereignty components out of Vancouver, and some organizations that are just doing great work that need some acknowledgement in the things that they're doing today are, of course, your Information Governance Center. But there's also things that we as First Nations need to consider. Bill C-11 has had its first reading in the House. I encourage you to take a look through it. I've attached a copy on my site. The federal government's white paper on data sovereignty. And Governance of Indians by Sol Sanderson. Some of the important work that he's been doing for our people for many, many years. Again, it's been a pleasure and an honor. And I welcome you to join me in my new journey and my new chapter at links established1950.ca and some of the work that we're doing there. Thank you very much for your time. Hi.